Have you ever been lost? How did you find out where you are? The two most important points on any map are where you are and where you want to be.
Once you know those 2 points, it's simply effort and logistics to go from one to the other.
But how do you know if you are making progress?
In this video, we'll look at how to measure that progress using key performance indicators.
A key performance indicator, or KPI for short, is a metric used to track how well an individual, team, or organization is achieving a specific goal.
You can check out my video on SMART goals using the link in the description below. Good KPIs are tied to a clear objective, they have a defined way to measure them, and they are monitored over time. Of course, the purpose is to guide our decisions. There's no point in measuring something if you're not going to use that data. Think of it this way.
Have you ever been in a meeting where someone says, "Wow, we're doing amazing," and everyone else is thinking, based on what? The weather? The moon phase? The fact that the coffee machine worked today?
If so, you need KPIs.
Since a KPI is a measurable number that shows how well you're doing against a specific goal, you can use it like a scoreboard.
Because if you don't have a scoreboard, no one knows how well you are doing.
A KPI answers if we are improving and we are hitting our targets. If we aren't, we can make decisions based on data. But not every number should be a KPI. Some numbers are just numbers. We can easily get lost tracking all of these numbers. We have to identify the metric that matters the most toward a goal. That is our KPI. This can be a single metric or something that summarizes a group of metrics. For example, let's look at a manufacturing production line. The line produced 800 parts in one 8-hour shift. This is a metric, but not a great KPI. A better metric would be how efficiently we made those parts. If we could have made 2,000 parts in a shift, 800 is a very low number. However, if we stop the line for 4 hours of planned maintenance, 800 parts looks much better.
Good KPIs often have several important traits. First, it should be tied to a goal. If our goal is to increase output 15% and we learn that we have a 1.5% defect rate, that defect rate would be a good KPI. Next, a good KPI is measurable and consistent. We can calculate it the same way every time. Your KPIs should also be actionable. If we see a change in the KPI, there should be a clear action to take. For example, if our defect rate increases, we should stop, identify the root cause, and correct it. KPIs should always be time-based. It might be daily, weekly, monthly, but it should always be monitored. In the case of our defects, we might even check those hourly. And finally, here's the big one. Somebody owns it. A specific person should be responsible for each individual KPI.
Because everyone is responsible is how you end up with no one did it.
KPIs can be divided into 2 categories. Lagging indicators tell us what has already happened. Things like on-time delivery rates, customer return rates, monthly revenue. It's the things that we can see that have already happened. Leading indicators are signals that predict what can happen in the future. For example, a 90-day sales forecast allows us to make plans on what we can do to support those sales. A capability study tells us how reliable a machine will be in the future.
A leading KPI is like checking a weather report. A lagging KPI is like looking out the window and seeing what the weather is doing.
For sales, a bad KPI would be the number of emails sent. I could send 400 emails, but still only sell 1 paperclip. A good KPI would be how many emails generated a sale. Based on this feedback, I could adjust the wording in my emails. Now the question becomes, how do I pick a KPI? Here are a few quick steps you can take to simplify your KPIs.
First, start with a single goal. Next, define what success looks like. Remember, this should be measurable and consistent. Third, identify 1 to 3 KPIs for your goal. In this case, we could easily track ticket sales versus actual attendance. Another lagging KPI would be the sales by different types of shows. This would give us insight into which shows our audience like. We could also track our advertising spend per show and compare it to attendance. These KPIs could be monitored and analyzed to forecast our future ticket sales.
Resist the temptation to keep adding KPIs. Remember, the K stands for key. Pick 1 to 3 things to track, not 47. If everything's a priority, nothing's a priority.
Your KPIs should quickly show you the pulse of your process, not the minute details.
Which brings us to our 4th step, setting targets and thresholds.
The target is where you want to be. Your KPI will help you track progress toward this goal. The threshold is a limit that tells you if you have a problem. Now is the time to start looking at the minute details.
What could go wrong with your KPIs? Here are a few traps to avoid.
Look out for vanity KPIs. These are impressive numbers, but they are not related to any outcome. Collecting this data serves no purpose. As mentioned, avoid too many KPIs. You end up only tracking data and not making measurable improvements. Calculations that are not defined can create havoc in your organization. Everyone will argue over how to calculate the data instead of fixing the problem. Finally, KPIs with no action plan simply become interesting but trivial.
If your KPI review ends with, "Wow, that's wild," but nobody changes anything, that's not performance management. It's simply a documentary. In the end, KPIs are real numbers that tell you if you're making progress toward a real goal, and if you need to take action before things go off the rail.
Thank you for watching this video. If you found it interesting, please click the like button. If you want to see more like this, please subscribe. It really helps out the channel.